Welcome back to Medic AI Euphonia, Ebony, the show where we break down everything physical and mental health and see how AI and tech can help us be healthier.
And this time, it's perfect timing because January is National Winter Sports TBI Awareness Month.
So we're going on a deep dive into winter sports injuries.
Makes sense. It's the perfect time of year to talk about, the most common ones, concussions, knee injuries, and of course all those sprains and strains.
Exactly. And we're not just going to cover what causes those injuries. We'll talk about how to prevent them, how to treat them, and we'll take a look at the latest in AI and technology.
Yeah, because those tools are really changing the game when it comes to predicting, diagnosing, and managing those injuries for athletes and just everyday people.
So let's get started with why these injuries are so common in winter sports. It's not like we're out there tackling each other on ice skates or something.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how much force is involved even in sports that look pretty low impact. Cold weather's a big factor. It makes our muscles less flexible, so they're more likely to get strained or sprained. And then you add in falls on that hard-packed snow or ice, and your chances of fractures and dislocations go way up. And don't forget the speed factor, too. Skiing, snowboarding, even ice skating. You're making quick stops and changes in direction. All that puts a lot of stress on your joints.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when I was learning to snowboard, I had a pretty spectacular wipeout.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, let's set the scene. You're skiing down a slope, you hit a patch of ice, and bam, you fall, landing hard on your outstretched arm.
Ouch. Classic scenario. And unfortunately, that's usually how people dislocate their shoulders. And because you instinctively try to brace yourself when you fall, that's also a common way to end up with a wrist fracture, too.
So we've got wrist and shoulder injuries high on the list. What other types of fractures do you see often with winter sports?
Arm and leg fractures are up there. Collarbones, too, especially with skiing and snowboarding. And then there's this injury called skier's thumb. It's pretty common.
Skier's thumb. That sounds painful. How does that happen?
Usually it happens when someone falls while they're still holding onto their ski pole. That force can strain or even tear a ligament in your thumb called the ulnar collateral ligament.
Okay, let's move on to concussions.
Right.
What exactly is a concussion and why is it such a big deal in winter sports?
A concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury, and I know mild might sound misleading because any brain injury is serious, right? But in this case, mild means that most concussions will resolve on their own with proper rest. That being said, it's super important to recognize and manage them properly.
Absolutely. Are concussions more common in some winter sports than others? Do we have any data on that?
Yeah. Snowboarding and skiing, they make up a lot of concussion cases.
Yes.
Studies have shown about 30% of concussions in extreme sports happen in snowboarding. The more advanced riders and those using terrain parks are at higher risk. And skiing. Head injuries are almost half of all skiing-related injuries. Again, it's more common in advanced skiers and those doing freestyle competitions.
So pushing your limits increases your risk. Makes sense. So how can you tell if you've got a concussion, a minor head injury, or even just a migraine? They can feel kind of similar, can't they?
Yeah, they can. That's why it's important to know the differences. A minor head injury usually means a bump or a bruise, maybe some pain and swelling, but you're not confused and there's no memory loss. You know where you are and what's going on. With a migraine, you might have a severe headache usually on one side of your head and maybe nausea, vomiting, or sensitivity to light and sound. Some people experience an aura before the headache starts, which means they have visual disturbances. Migraines are usually triggered by specific things like stress or certain foods. Concussions, they have a different set of symptoms.
What sets them apart?
Well, with a concussion, you might have physical symptoms like headache, dizziness, problems with balance, nausea, or even vomiting. But the main thing with a concussion is the cognitive stuff, like confusion, trouble concentrating, or memory problems. There can also be emotional changes, like being more irritable than usual mood, swings anxiety. And some people have trouble sleeping. What makes it tricky is the symptoms don't always show up right away. Sometimes it takes hours or even days.
So if you think someone has a concussion, say you're on the slopes with a friend, what should you do right away?
The most important thing is to stop whatever they're doing. No more skiing or snowboarding or anything that could be risky. Then check their symptoms. Are they confused, dizzy, having trouble remembering things? And this is crucial. Get them medical help. A doctor can tell you how serious the concussion is and what they need to do to recover.
What happens if a concussion isn't treated the right way?
Well, most concussions do get better with enough rest. But if it's not treated properly, there are serious risks. We're talking cognitive issues like trouble concentrating, memory problems, processing information more slowly. Imagine struggling to remember things, focus at work, or even follow a conversation. It can really affect your life.
That's scary. Are there any other long-term effects besides the cognitive stuff?
Unfortunately, yes. Untreated concussions can also lead to changes in mood and behavior, like increased anxiety, depression, irritability, mood swings. Some people even have personality changes. They become withdrawn or more aggressive. And then there are the physical symptoms that linger. Chronic headaches, balance problems, sensitivity to light and noise, the whole bunch of problems that can happen.
Wow, it's not just a bump on the head. It can have lasting consequences.
Exactly. And it's not just the immediate impact. There's also a higher risk of getting injured again, especially from something called second impact syndrome. This happens when someone gets a second concussion before they've fully recovered from the first one. It can cause serious brain swelling and be life-threatening.
That's a lot to take in. So managing a concussion the right way is super important. But how can we prevent these injuries in the first place?
That's where things get exciting. Technology is playing a huge role now. We're seeing amazing advancements in AI and wearable tech that can not only help us recognize and diagnose these injuries, but also maybe even predict them.
And predict injuries. How is that possible?
It's all about data. Think about wearables that use inertial measurement units to track things like your gait and sleep patterns after a concussion, or sensors that monitor the angles of your joints and the load on them during activity, which can help identify movement patterns that increase your risk of knee injuries. And then there's biomechanics monitoring this, can actually predict strains and sprains before they even happen.
So we're talking about being proactive, not just reacting after an injury.
Exactly. Imagine an app that analyzes data from your wearables to find patterns that suggest you might be at risk for an injury. Maybe you're overtraining, your form is off, or you're not sleeping enough. These apps can flag those issues and give you personalized tips to help you stay safe.
That's amazing. Is this only for serious athletes? Can everyday people benefit too?
Definitely. One of the best things about these advancements is that they can help everyone. Imagine AI looking at data from your smartwatch or fitness tracker to predict injuries, even if you're not a pro athlete.
That's personalized medicine at its best. Can you give us some real-world examples of this AI in action?
Sure. There's a company called Queer.ai, and they've developed this AI tool called QXR. It's FDA cleared, and it's really good at diagnosing something called pneumothorax, which is a collapsed lung.
Collapsed lung. That sounds scary.
It can be, especially if it happens during a snowboarding accident. That's why QXR is so important. It can help doctors figure out chest injuries quickly and accurately, even in remote places like Everest Base Camp.
Everest Base Camp. That's impressive. But how does this apply to people who aren't climbing mountains?
Think of it this way: quicker and more accurate. Diagnoses mean better outcomes for everyone, whether you're on a mountain or in your local ER. And QXR is just one example. There are tons of AI applications being developed that will change how we diagnose and treat all kinds of injuries.
So we've talked about diagnosing and treating injuries. Let's switch gears and talk about preventing them. What can parents and coaches do to keep young athletes safe, especially during winter sports?
That's a great question. Parents and coaches are super important in keeping young athletes safe.
What are some specific things parents can do?
Education is key. Parents need to know about common winter sports injuries, the signs and symptoms, and why early detection is so important. They also need to be familiar with concussion protocols and know how to report symptoms right away. Yep. Open communication is really important too. Kids need to feel like they can talk to their parents about any pain or discomfort without worrying about being benched.
Makes sense. What about safety gear and behavior on the slopes?
Proper gear is non-negotiable. Helmets, knee pads, wrist guards, anything that gives extra protection. And it needs to fit well and be in good condition. Parents should also encourage safe practices. Following the rules of the slopes, avoiding risky moves, and knowing their limits can make a big difference.
All good points. What about those subtle signs of injury? How can parents tell if something's serious, especially with younger kids who might not be able to say what's wrong?
You have to watch them closely. Look for any changes in behavior, mood, or physical performance. Is your child suddenly more irritable or withdrawn? Are they having trouble with things they used to do easily? Are they complaining of headaches or dizziness? This could be signs of an injury, even if they're not saying they're in pain. One thing we touched on was AI's ability to predict injuries. Not just for elite athletes, but for anyone using wearables. It's almost like having a crystal ball that can tell you when you're pushing too hard or developing bad habits that could lead to injuries.
That sounds like science fiction coming to life.
Yeah.
How does AI actually do that predicting?
Well, it starts with data collection. Wearables track all sorts of information in real time, like your heart rate, how active you are, sleep patterns, even your movements. And then apps can log additional details, like how hard you're training, how much time you're taking to recover, any feedback you give about how you're feeling.
So it's like building this digital picture of your activity and your overall health.
Exactly. And that's where the AI comes in. Algorithms go through all that data looking for patterns or red flags that could mean you're at a higher risk for injury. For example, if you're constantly going beyond your usual training load, not sleeping enough, or making certain movements that have led to injuries in the past, the AI picks up on those things.
It's like a super smart trainer who knows your body better than you do.
That's a great way to put it. And then based on that analysis, the AI can give you personalized suggestions to help you avoid those injuries. It might suggest adjusting your training schedule, getting more rest, or even doing certain exercises to improve your form or strengthen areas that are vulnerable to injury.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But our bodies change over time, right? Our fitness levels go up and down, our routines change. Can the AI keep up with all that?
That's a great question. These AI systems are designed to learn continuously. As you train and compete, the AI model updates itself based on your performance and any injuries you have. And because it's getting real-time data from your wearables, it's constantly fine-tuning its predictions to reflect your current state.
So it's always learning and refining its understanding of your body.
Exactly. And it goes even further than that. The AI can also use feedback from you, your coaches, your trainers, even medical professionals. This feedback helps the AI get even better at making predictions and recommendations, making sure that it's giving you the most accurate and helpful advice possible.
So it's not just crunching numbers, it's actually incorporating human expertise too.
Exactly. And that's what makes these AI-powered systems so powerful. They combine the analytical abilities of a machine with real-world insights from humans.
I'm sure some of our listeners are wondering how accurate these predictions really are. Can we really trust AI to predict injuries with that level of certainty?
It's a valid question. AI isn't perfect, just like any technology. How accurate its predictions are depends on the quality and amount of data it's using. If the data is incomplete, biased, or inaccurate, then the predictions won't be reliable.
So garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Exactly. It's also important to remember that AI predictions are just that, predictions. They're not guarantees. There's always a chance an injury could happen even if the AI hasn't flagged it.
So it's more like a tool to help you make smarter decisions, not a replacement for common sense and listening to your body.
Absolutely. AI is powerful, but it's not a magic bullet. Use it wisely and combine it with other injury prevention strategies like proper training techniques, getting enough rest, and paying attention to your body's signals.
Speaking of training, I want to talk about the role of coaches in preventing injuries, specifically using video analysis.
Video analysis is becoming really popular for coaches to spot potential injury risks. By carefully studying an athlete's movements, they can catch subtle biomechanical issues that you wouldn't see with the naked eye. They can analyze joint angles, alignment, and technique to find any deviations from the ideal form that could lead to injury.
It's like using slow motion replay to break down every single movement.
Exactly. And by catching these risky movements early on, coaches can work with athletes to improve their technique and reduce the chances of injury. It's a proactive strategy that can have a huge impact on athletes' safety.
That makes sense. Are there any other ways coaches can use video analysis for injury prevention?
Definitely. They can use it to track fatigue levels. By comparing videos from different sessions, they can see how fatigue is affecting an athlete's performance. They can pinpoint any changes in movement patterns or coordination that might point to an increased injury risk. So it's not just about analyzing individual movements. It's about spotting trends and changes over time to get a better understanding of an athlete's overall well-being. This type of analysis is especially helpful for preventing overuse injuries, the kind that happen from pushing athletes too hard or not giving them enough rest.
So video analysis has become like a secret weapon for coaches to help their athletes stay safe and healthy.
It's a powerful tool, and it's getting more accessible all the time. There are affordable video analysis apps that coaches can use right on their smartphones or tablets. It's easier than ever to integrate this technology into training plans.
This is all fascinating, but it's important to remember that technology isn't always the answer. Sometimes the simplest way to prevent injuries is to pay attention to our bodies and take breaks when we need them.
I completely agree. Technology can give us amazing insights, but it's not a replacement for common sense and being aware of your own body. It's so important to listen to how your body feels, recognize those signs of fatigue and discomfort, and know when to back off.
It's about finding that balance between tech and intuition data and self-care.
Exactly.
So what are some of the standout wearables you've seen?
Well, one that's been making waves is the Whoop strap.
Yeah.
It's a fitness tracker that goes beyond just counting your steps and calories.
Uh-huh.
This wearable gets into your physiology, monitoring heart rate variability, sleep quality, even your strain levels.
Strain levels, what does that mean?
It measures how much stress your body's under both physically and mentally. The Whoop strap uses that data to help you understand how you're recovering from workouts and other activities, so you can avoid overtraining and lower your risk of getting injured.
So it's like having a personal recovery coach right there on your wrist.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
What other wearables are shaking things up?
Catapult Sports has this whole range of wearables that are super popular with pro athletes and teams. They use GPS tracking accelerometers and gyroscopes to monitor everything from speed and distance to biomechanics and movement patterns.
Wow, so they can track pretty much every aspect of an athlete's performance.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
By analyzing all that, data coaches and medical staff can identify potential injury risks and adjust training plans to keep those athletes safe and healthy.
That's incredible. So we've got wearables that can track our recovery, monitor our biomechanics, and even predict potential injuries. What about apps? Are there any that are particularly helpful for injury prevention and management?
There are tons of great apps out there, but one that's really impressive is Zebra Health. It's designed specifically for concussion management, and it's been really effective at improving communication between athletes, coaches, and healthcare providers.
So it's like a one-stop shop for everything concussion-related.
You got it. Athletes can use the app to track their symptoms, report any issues to their medical team, and stay on track with their recovery protocols. It takes away a lot of the guesswork and helps make sure athletes are returning to their sport safely and responsibly.
That's huge, especially for those athletes who might be tempted to ignore their symptoms or push themselves too hard before they're fully recovered.
Exactly. And speaking of technique and recovery, there's another app called Huddle Technique that's been getting a lot of attention. It's a video analysis tool that lets athletes record their movements during training and get instant feedback on their form.
So it's like having a virtual coach in your pocket telling you what to tweak.
Precisely. And by improving their technique, athletes can lower their risk of those sprains, and other overuse injuries.
Okay, so we've got wearables and apps covered. Now let's talk AI. What are some of the most exciting AI applications you've seen for preventing and treating sports injuries?
One company that's really pushing the boundaries is Kitman Labs. They've developed an AI-powered platform that analyzes an athlete's performance data, medical history, even things like sleep patterns and nutrition, to identify potential injury risks.
So they're looking at the whole picture, not just the workouts.
That's right. And by spotting those risk factors early on, coaches and medical staff can intervene with personalized training plans, recovery strategies, and other preventative measures to keep athletes performing at their best.
It's like having a crystal ball that can see injuries before they happen. Are there any other AI systems that are making a difference?
Oh, absolutely. The Athlete Monitoring System, or AMS, is another one. It uses AI algorithms to analyze data from wearables, training logs, and other sources to predict injuries.
So it's like a super smart early warning system for athlete health.
You could say that. And it's been shown to be very effective at reducing injury rates in a lot of different sports.
This is all incredibly exciting. It seems like technology is really revolutionizing how we approach athlete health and safety. But with all this data being collected, are there concerns about privacy? How is this information being used and protected?
That's a great question and something we should all be thinking about. The good news is that a lot of these companies are taking privacy very seriously. They're using strong encryption to protect data, and they're putting strict controls in place so only authorized personnel can see sensitive information.
So there are safeguards to prevent unauthorized access and misuse.
Exactly. And a lot of these companies are also committed to transparency. They have clear privacy policies that spell out how they collect, use, and share data.
So it's about striking a balance, using the power of technology, but also respecting people's privacy.
Absolutely. And as AI and wearable tech keep advancing, it's going to be more and more important to have these conversations about ethics.
This has been a fascinating look at winter sports injuries and the incredible technologies that are changing the game. What's one key takeaway you hope our listeners walk away with today?
I want listeners to feel empowered.
Right.
We're not helpless when it comes to these injuries. With the right knowledge, the right tools, and a proactive approach, we can significantly lower our risk and recover more effectively if we do get injured. And as technology keeps evolving, the future of sports medicine looks brighter than ever.
That's a great message to end on. And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of health technology. Until then,